Hey everybody, welcome back to Brojo Online. It's good to be back with you again. And today we're going to be covering a kind of core practical skill in terms of your social life. We're going to have a look at initiating conversations with complete strangers. So this is really the beginning phase of a new relationship, a new friendship, a new whatever, is actually breaking the ice between that kind of concept of being strangers to now being in an interaction. We're going to have a look at this because this will also help with your leadership skills. You can sit around waiting for people to come to you, or you can develop a skill set and a lifestyle that allows you to have every person in the world be a potential connection for you, which is the kind of truth about the world. So we're going to look at how to do that today, and we're really going to separate a couple of things. One is we're going to look at the knowing what to say is not the issue. And secondly, we're going to really step away from that pickup type mindset, that manipulative, try to come up with a good thing to say so that they'll like me and this will continue type mindset. We're going to look to break that down. I want to help you guys get to a place where you can initiate a conversation with a complete stranger without having to know what you're going to say. So before we even look at how to do this, we really need to start by examining where and when we can do this. So one of the biggest barriers that I see people being held back by in terms of their social life is thinking that they have to wait for these small windows of opportunity to meet people, and the rest of their day, the rest of their time, it's unavailable to them. So let's start by having a look at where you have opportunities to meet people in your life. I want you to just take a second to think about that, maybe even write a list down. Now, we've talked about this one in the face-to-face version of Brojo sessions quite often. And what comes up is the idea that actually anywhere and any time you are in a situation where there are other people physically present is an opportunity for you to initiate new connections. There are some extreme examples when a particular person is inappropriate to talk to. For example, it would be kind of probably inappropriate to talk to someone who's having a mental breakdown with their family and go and initiate a connection with them, hoping to start a new friendship, that kind of thing. But even then, as I say that, I thought, well, you could still initiate a connection by caring for them. The initial example that came into my head is the grieving widow at a funeral. It would be inappropriate to initiate a conversation with her. But would it? If you're going there with the genuine intention of being compassionate, it'd probably be fine. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm yet to hear of an example of a situation where it is not actually appropriate to meet someone. Now, I know you'll have a big list in your head of situations where you believe it is socially inappropriate to initiate a connection. For example, in a public place, at a cafe, walking down the street, in the grocery store, in the supermarket, in the gym is a big one. People think, oh, they just want to work out. I shouldn't be talking to people. There's all these rules you have around where and when and why, where and when that you can meet people. And quite often you'll have a very limited range. So at a social situation, as you see it, such as being in a nightclub or a bar or a party, the workplace, but only the people you work directly with, so on, so on. You're going to have these limitations as to who you can and can't initiate a connection with. I want you to start by allowing yourself the possibility of letting go of those limitations. You don't have to believe it just yet. But just open your mind to the idea that if you can actually get to someone physically and make contact with them, then it's actually okay to do so. We're going to be breaking down why you don't think that over the course of the session. So I want to invite you to start thinking about some baby steps in that direction. For example, at your work. Now, most of us work in an environment where we have other people in the workplace. So we share an office building or a work site. There's customers and clients that are regularly coming in and out. There's a whole range of people that we interact with as part of our work. For some of you, that won't be the case if you're a solopreneur or a consultant, but even then, you're going to be coming into contact with people throughout your workday. I want you right now to just take a note mentally or even physically, writing it down, of the people you work with whom you have not had a connection with yet. People that you haven't gone past maybe a bit of a how's it going type thing, never actually had an actual interaction with them, and yet you see them every week or even every day. There might be people in a different team. There might be people who share the building with you but aren't working for the same company. There might be clients that aren't yours to work with. I want you to think about, there might be the janitor who comes in to clean up the office. I want you to think about who is available to you physically in your workplace whom you have not yet had a connection with. There's the people who serve you. There's the people who provide a service. There's the guy who pumps your gas. There's the girl at the checkout counter at the supermarket. There's the people who work in the retail stores, the people that you hand over money and have these transactions with every week. There's those people. I want you to think about those people, how often they appear in your day. How often are you buying stuff? How often are you interacting with a human in order to do so? How often are you having contact with someone, but you don't bother trying to socialize, as you might put it, because of the roles that you believe you're in? I'm the customer, they're the service provider. There's no further conversation to be had other than what's required to purchase this item, or some light, superficial conversation. Oh, it's nice weather, blah, blah, blah. Right? I want you to start thinking about those people, because they're all potential connections as well. They are just people after all. Then there's the more obvious kind of social events, meetups, parties, nightclubs, bars, all these things. Now, there'll be people within those situations who you believe it's inappropriate to talk to. For example, you might be at a bar and you think it's okay to talk to, say, a girl that you want to hit on, but it's not okay to talk to the big group of guys laughing in the corner, or it's not okay to talk to the bouncer. There'll be people who you have rules about who you can and can't talk to depending on any given time and the context. You might be at a party, it's okay to talk to the people you've already met before, but not the new people. You might be at a party at a bar, it's okay to talk to people who are within the party, but not people who are outside it. You're going to have all these rules about who you can and can't talk to. And I want you to start breaking those rules down so that you have as many opportunities to connect as possible. You never know. I had one of my friends and clients came, the original place I met him was at the Subway sandwich restaurant, and he was the guy who was always there when I was ordering my lunch. We got talking, and eventually he became more than the guy who works at Subway. You know, that kind of opportunity is available to you every day. So pretty much anyone, anywhere, anytime. On the bus, walking down the street, somebody who's in the same shop as you. These are people who are available to you to connect with at any given day or time. And if you look deep down behind your reasons as to why you can't talk to them, you'll see the real reason, the barrier you face, the fear. And we're going to have a look at that. One frame I want to plant in your mind, a frame that helps me. It's almost like this Girl Guides type shit. There's no such thing as a stranger. There's simply people you haven't said hi to yet. So strangers are simply people you have not had an interaction with yet. So if you can start to see that, if you can start to see that everyone walking down the street, every person and face you see, they look foreign to you. They look like this stranger, this unreadable, different species of human. And yet if they were your best friend, you wouldn't feel that way looking at them. So how you feel looking at them really has nothing to do with who they are, but your perception of your relationship with them. When you think someone's a stranger, it only feels that way because you think it. Yet if you were to look at them and go, as soon as I say hi to them, they're in my life, possibly. they've had the opportunity to connect with me. They might be a friend or something. They have all this possibility attached to them as soon as I interact, as soon as I connect, or reach out and invite them to connect. So I want you to start challenging the idea that all these people you see all day long are somehow unavailable to you. It's simply not true. But of course it feels like it. So now we're going to have a look at why you get that feeling. Why is it that you feel nervousness, hesitation, doubt, confusion about going up to a complete stranger and saying hi? Let's have a look, and I want you to just take a moment to think, what are the barriers that come up? If you can think of a scenario where you would never say hi to someone, maybe it's on the bus, maybe it's like a high status person coming into work, maybe it's someone you're really attracted to, maybe it's somebody who seems to be in a rush, or somebody who seems to be in a bad mood, or some other form of person that you just never try to connect with. You wouldn't even go near it. I want you to imagine that person right now and just allow your brain to tell you the story as to why. So when I ask you, why can't you go and say hi to that person? What is the story that your brain tells you? Now in Brojo, we've had a number of occasions where we have had this conversation, and there's been some common themes coming up, some common stories that most of us share around why we can't initiate a conversation. One of the first and foremost ones is the concept of embarrassment, the concept of a kind of public humiliation. And this one's really, really common, and this one's particularly when there are other people around. So there's other people who are going to witness you initiating this connection. So it could be in a social situation like a party or a bar or a nightclub, or whatever you call a social situation. Or it could be that you're in a cafe and everything can be heard by everyone else in the cafe. So if you were to obviously be talking to a stranger and everyone knew that that's what's happening, you'd feel immense pressure, a possibility of embarrassment. This is often one that we hide behind other stories. The other story might be that I'll be an inconvenience to them. So when we look at someone that we want to talk to, we see that somehow us going up and initiating a conversation with them will somehow make their day worse. That they had other plans and we will ruin those plans, that they will feel uncomfortable and we will ruin the comfort that they once held, that kind of thing. Excuse me a second, I'm getting pretty warm here. That's better. So the idea becomes that it's somehow an inconvenience for us to start a connection. It's an inconvenience to the other person to have that opportunity to connect. So that's one of the first barriers I want to address. One of the first things I really want to look at is the concept of what they miss out on if you don't. You've spent a lot of time already thinking about what they'll miss out on if you do. You've thought that they'll be late for their meeting. You've thought that they will feel uncomfortable. You've thought that they will be embarrassed by you doing this. You've put a lot of thought into that already. So we don't need to dive too much deeper into that one. I want you to think about what they've missed out on. Think about how often you've been lonely and just wish somebody else had initiated. Think about how often you've been attracted to someone and wish that they would start a conversation. Just think how often you've wished somebody else would come up to you and begin this thing. Are you so alone in that wishing and that desire? Do you really think that other people don't feel that? Or is it possible that everyone else is walking around wishing that somebody else would start things? Now, maybe not right here, right now, at this time do they feel that way, but I think when you look overall at society, it doesn't even matter what country you're in, and how lacking in confidence socially most people are, you have to come to the quite logical assumption that most people aren't initiating. And that means most people aren't connecting, because without an initiation, there is no connection. If somebody doesn't get this thing started, it will not start. So as you look at people and you think, oh, I'm going to be such an inconvenience to them, I'm going to be such a hassle, ask yourself, what do they miss out on if I don't? Now, your self-worth will be at a different level depending on who you are. But some of you will think, well, they miss out on nothing. There's nothing special about me. There's nothing that they miss out on. I'm simply a burden to society, poor me, blah, 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 right? We all get that. What I like to think of, the frame that I keep in mind, is the invitation they're missing out on. Let's say, just hypothetically, that who you are is ideal to them. Now, you don't have to believe this yourself. You don't have to have the self-worth to think I'm an ideal person. But if you think there's 7.2 billion people on the planet, given the last census, the idea that maybe some of them will love you just the way you are, some of them, the way you are right here, now, today, is exactly what they need a piece of. It's exactly the kind of thing that they've been looking for today. Now, you don't know who that person's going to be. You don't know which person is going to feel that way about you. But one thing you know for sure is that if you don't initiate, that person misses out. It might just be 1 in 10 people. It might be 90% of people hate you. Highly unlikely, but let's say that's true. That means you need to initiate with 10 people to give somebody a decent shot. There's a story that I keep in mind. I told this at the Brojo session a little while ago. There was I don't know if it's urban myth or if it's real, but it helps demonstrate the point. There was a suicide note found, I believe, in San Francisco in an apartment. And the note said, I'm going to walk to the Golden Gate Bridge and I'm going to smile at everyone along my way. And if no one smiles back, I'm going to jump. And so this note's found and the guy's missing. So obviously he got the whole way there, without anyone smiling at him. And what I think of, and the reason I think of this example is, what if I'd walked past him and smiled at him? Would I have saved his life? What could we be doing with these little interactions every day that might kind of save a life? When there's someone out there, you think about how many people walk around out there thinking nobody cares about me and no one's interested in me. Think about how many people feel that way. How many thousands of people, how many millions, possibly even billions of people feel that way. You would eliminate that feeling, if only for a second, if you said, I choose you today. You're important to me today. You matter to me right now. You are significant. In this crowd, you're the one I wanted to say hi to. That's what you could be giving someone, and that's what they're missing out on if you pussy out of doing this. So next time you convince yourself that you're an inconvenience and so on and so forth, now that may be true. We won't ever know because you haven't tested it. But make sure you give balance to this, and you also acknowledge that you may have missed out on saving a life today. That person who might look fine, like there's nothing wrong with them, might be thinking, if no one connects with me today, I'm a loser. And you might be able to help them break that belief. And if you don't choose to act, if you don't choose to say hi or whatever it is, you take that away from them. I want you to keep that in mind and stop letting yourself off the easy path saying, I can't talk to people. It's not true. You can. And not only that, they miss out if you don't, possibly. Underneath this idea that we're an inconvenience or that we'll be embarrassed is this kind of strategy to avoid it. So one of the other barriers that we come to initiating is trying to think of the right thing to say. Often the thing that freezes us up when it comes to starting a conversation with a stranger is trying to come up with something good to say. The whole pickup industry is based on answering that question. Here are some good things to say. Here's a good way to do it. Here's an effective way to do it. They're trying to kind of sell the idea that this is the problem, that you not knowing the right thing to say is the problem. Once you solve that problem, then you can meet people. You approach anxiety and so on. But what's really happening here is it's the very act of you trying to think of the right thing to say that creates the block. Now, why is this? Why is trying to think of the right thing to say such a block to connecting with people? And the answer is because when you're thinking of the right thing to say, that means you're trying to get something. And what we're really going to be looking at today is how to initiate conversations for the sake of initiating rather than trying to get something. If you're trying to think of the right thing to say, that means there's a wrong thing to say. Now, what's the difference between those? Well, the right thing will get you the reaction you're hoping to get. The wrong thing will prevent that reaction from happening. So let's say I go up to someone who I'm attracted to and I want to get sex from them, or I want to get a relationship or get approval from them. The right thing to say would be something that they approve of. The wrong thing to say would be something they disapprove of or are unattracted to. Yet if I don't care about sleeping with them or not, if it doesn't matter to me whether or not they even react at all to what I say, there is no right or wrong. So the right or wrong can only occur if we're trying to get something in the first place, if our reason for trying to connect with this person is about getting something from them, about taking something from them. This comes up so often throughout all the Brojo stuff, this idea of being attached to a future-based outcome, being emotionally attached to outcomes. I want you all to start thinking about one of the reasons that you don't initiate conversations with strangers is because you don't see any point in doing so unless you're going to get something from it. I'm telling you right now from experience after many years and working with many hundreds of people around this is the core thing that needs to change. If you can get to a place where initiating connections with new people is about practicing initiating, it's about living by your values, it isn't about getting anything from them. How they react has nothing to do with it. Then your social abundant life will begin. But it's one of the hardest things to do because you've been trained your whole life to think there's no point in doing something if you're not going to get something. And that getting has to be something external. The other person has to give it to you, or you have to take it from the other person. You can't receive it from yourself. So bear in mind, think of the right thing to say. This video, maybe I should have said this earlier, this video isn't about saying the right thing. Absolutely not. It's not about saying the wrong thing either. This video is about being truthful. And that has no right or wrong attached to it. It's just a level of truthfulness. So if you're worried that you won't say the right thing, if you're wanting it to go well, I hate these things, but I use them all the time. The issue isn't about coming up with the right thing to say. The issue isn't about making it go well. It's the fact that that's the reason you're doing this in the first place. They can feel it. And the funny thing is, this is what makes it more likely for you to get so-called rejected. If I go up to someone and I'm trying to get something from them, they can feel that. They can feel the rape of it. You can feel it when someone comes up to you, obviously about to sell you something. We talk about in Brojo the clipboard thing. When you're walking down the street and somebody with a clipboard and a lanyard around their neck starts walking towards you, you can feel it. Like, oh God, they're going to take something. Even if they're smiling and they're like, hi, how's your day going? Blah, blah, blah. You're still like, yeah. What are you trying to get? Come on, mate, out with it. And this is what we do to others when we're trying to get something. When we're trying to think of the right thing to say, they can feel us trying to take from them. And that's why so often it's hard to think of the right thing to say. It's why so often every time we think we came up with the right thing to say, we get this kind of negative response. It's because they're not responding to what we said. They're responding to that neediness they can feel coming through underneath. So when you're being attached to them accepting you or approving of you, and you're not willing to face disapproval, you're not willing for them to hate you in order to take a risk, if you're not willing to take that risk to initiate a connection with the possibility that they don't want you to do that right now, then there's going to be neediness there, and it doesn't matter what you say. It's going to undermine the whole interaction. Quite often, one of the big barriers to initiating a conversation is just simply the feeling of anxiety, the physical sensations. You can generate it right now. I want you to just think of somebody who you'd never say hi to, and I want you to just imagine going up and saying hi to them and it going badly, whatever that means in your mind. Notice how you can do that and actually feel the embarrassment, even though it hasn't even occurred yet. That feeling, it's an uncomfortable, unpleasant feeling for a lot of people. Your heart rate increases, your palms start sweating, you get a sick feeling in your stomach. I even, like, my balls literally shrink up inside me, I get this like shaky feeling, my thoughts are racing, my throat goes dry, there's like a lump in my throat. I become hypersensitive, I feel like I'm being watched, this paranoia comes over me. All of these things happen. Now, these things don't actually stop me. What stops me is my unwillingness to experience more of those sensations. When I decide, no, I don't want to feel this way, and I'm not going to do anything that will make me feel this way, that's what stops me. So the feelings themselves, they're just an unpleasant feeling. You can still walk and talk with that feeling. Unless you have a full-blown panic attack or a heart attack, there's really no amount of nervousness or anxiety that stops you. What stops you is you go, I don't want to feel this way anymore. And so you turn away from any behavior that might increase that feeling. So one of the key things I want you to stop doing is to stop lying to yourself that nervousness stops you, that anxiety prevents you from talking to people. It doesn't. Anxiety is just a feeling. It doesn't really prevent you from doing anything. You might not talk quite as well as usual, and even that will be more in your head than it is measurably externally measurable. You might feel really nervous. A lot of times people can't tell when you do. You sound normal or whatever, but sometimes you might not. Your voice might get a bit croaky, or you might shake and shiver, or you might lose your train of thought, that kind of thing. But none of these are actually massive barriers to you going up and opening your mouth in front of somebody else. That can still happen. So overall, when we look at these barriers, these things that are in our mind stopping us from having a conversation, the key is in letting go of it going well. Instead, look to practice your living by your values. And this is what I really think is the best way to look at initiating conversations, is it's just practice. You're practicing honesty, you're practicing courage, you're building your social skills, you're trying to impress yourself by outdoing what you did yesterday. You're giving people an invitation to meet you, an invitation that they do not have to RSVP. I want you to think about, I'm going to go, that person might be the one walking towards the bridge. They might look happy and cheerful or sad, or they might look like they're concentrating, or they might look like they're in a rush, but they might be rushing to the bridge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go stop them and give them a chance to connect with me. Now, if they don't want to, that's fine. At the very least, they get the recognition of being noticed. They might even go, no, whatever. But at least later on, they get to tell their friends, like, I had this guy come up to me today. You give them that, at least, a little ego boost. But know that occasionally you'll be saving a life. You won't even know it's happened. That person will walk away like, oh, okay, nice to meet you. All nervous and afraid and stuff. You're like, oh, that didn't go very well. But they go home, they lie in bed, they're like, someone noticed me today. I can't believe someone noticed me today. Oh my God, I thought nobody noticed me. You don't know when you're going to do that, but it will happen. You go up and initiate 100 connections, you're going to do it a couple of times. You're going to save a couple of lives. You might never know whose life you save. So you can do it for that reason. Make it your life-saving mission. Every time you initiate a connection with someone, you're giving them the recognition that they exist. All of us are born with an instinctive fear around insignificance. It triggers in around the age of 9 or 10 years old when we realize we are not the center of the universe. And we start to panic about being this insignificant grain of sand on an infinite beach. You can take away that insignificant feeling by just going, hey, I noticed you. It's really easy to do. And you can do this to impress yourself. So rather than going up to someone going, oh, I hope they approve of me, go up to someone, because going up to people is how you approve of yourself. You go up to 5 people today and you're like, I invited 5 people to connect with me today. That's 5 more than yesterday. I did 1 I was really nervous about and I still did it. That's the kind of thing you get the instant reward from. Now they could be like, oh, I don't want to talk. It doesn't even matter. You can even give yourself a reward for surviving through that experience. I just prompted to remember I was meeting people on Queen Street in Auckland. There's a guy I was with, showing him how to do it. This is a long time ago. And I went up to this tall This tall woman, really dark woman, like African dark. And I was just like this, ebony goddess type thing. And I went and stopped her and I was like, excuse me. And she just went, not interested, and walked off. And, the old me would have been quite gutted about that response. But there was two things that occurred. One is I was like, wow, she was intimidating and I still did it. So I gave myself massive courage points. And the second thing is I was like, now I know for sure that I don't want anything to do with her. For someone to react like that, tells me that's not the kind of person I want in my life. That one tiny reaction was actually a fairly accurate thing to measure her on. Because the kind of people I connect well with would never do that. So one of the other things to keep in mind is when you go to invite people to a connection, when they say no to that invitation, quite often they're saving you from having to worry about whether or not. Later on, you'll be thinking, all those people you hadn't said hi to, you'll be thinking, what if? When you go through with actually initiating connections, you never have to have that thought again. You get to sleep at night. You know what if, because you tried it. So this can be your reason for doing it, to experiment. So you go home and rather go, what if I just said hi to that girl? You can be like, oh, I said hi to that girl and this is what happened. I know that now. I can move on with my life. How do we usually decide on how to start a conversation? Well, based on those factors we talked about before, usually what we're trying to do is seek approval or avoid disapproval, which is kind of the same thing, just different strategies. And so usually when we're looking at someone, we're thinking, what do I say? All these complicated things start to occur mentally. We try to be interesting. Well, that's one of the key ones, is I want them to think of me as interesting when I start this conversation. Already you're on this huge amount of pressure and shame. You've told yourself that you as you are is not interesting. So you've already shamed you and rejected yourself before they've even had a chance to. And that's another sort of side note there. Nobody rejects you. You reject yourself before it's even happened. So trying to be interesting, and you're trying to get their approval. You're trying to impress them. You're 7.2 billion people on the planet, all of them with different preferences. So trying to impress someone that you know nothing about, really high pressure event. You have no idea what they like. You have no idea what will impress them. So you've got to work through your working knowledge of human psychology and assess them and go, I think maybe it'll be something like so much pressure. And you wonder why socializing isn't fun. You wonder why it feels like a chore. So trying to be interesting is not what I'd say is a helpful intention to starting a conversation. Trying to be interesting doesn't allow you the freedom and the vulnerability required to actually build a real connection. So already you're starting on the back foot. As soon as you try to be interesting, not only have you put yourself under a lot of pressure and you're not enjoying the experience, they can feel that you're trying. They can feel that neediness, which puts them off and brings up their defensiveness. Why is he needy? What's he trying to get from me? So trying to be interesting is one of the things we usually want to start a conversation with, and it's probably one of the biggest barriers to actually connecting. Judgmental compliment or even criticism. So a lot of the time that we start a conversation, we do so trying to make them feel good about themselves. This is different to giving. Giving is offering someone a gift. They can choose to take it or leave it. Complimenting, trying to make someone feel good, is usually about them associating feeling good with you. You want them to know that you gave them the compliment, that you are the source of their good feelings, so that they approve of you. So often when somebody gives a compliment to start a conversation, what they're trying to do is manipulate the other person to feeling good, and it's anchored to them. It's like some manipulative NLP shit, right? So going up to someone, I used to, and this is what I used to do. I'd used to go up to a girl and I'd say, you're gorgeous. It's a judgment. I'm saying of the ranking from super duper ugly through to excellently gorgeous, you are a gorgeous. You're an 8 out of 10. You are this amount of attractive and this amount of not attractive. That's what I'm saying when I use a word like that. Now, it's not about the word, it's about the intention behind it. I want her to feel the compliment and go, he gave it to me, and then feel good about me because of that assumption. So again, I'm already starting on the back foot in terms of connection. I'm hiding who I am behind this compliment. I'm using it like a protective shield. So I throw a compliment at them. If they don't like the compliment, at least they still can't get to me personally. So they don't know anything about me. And I'm kind of judging them. I'm putting them in a position where they now rely on me for their self-worth, which is really quite a dark thing to do if you think about it. Quite often we think it's good to give someone compliments, but deep down at our core, we're trying to enable a dependency on us. We want us to be their source of self-worth. Quite often get this with guys, who I can see this in the dance world. Somebody wants to be seen as the best person to dance with, and they actually get jealousy and feelings of loathing when a girl who was dancing with them enjoys dancing with someone else. Like she's getting her enjoyment of dance elsewhere. That kind of neediness. And we do this with compliments. Somebody will be complimenting someone all the time. You'll get it at work. Somebody's always giving you praise or whatever. And then if you go and tell them, oh yeah, I got this great recognition and feedback from someone else, you'll see them, well, why are you listening to them? That's kind of like, you're getting it from somewhere else, you bastard. This cheating. And that's how it begins, starting a conversation with a compliment like that. Quite often it's something we're hoping to start a conversation with, something that will make them attracted to us. Now that might not always be sexual attraction. It might be what you might call friend attraction, client attraction, boss attraction. This kind of idea that they will want more of you. And so you kind of filter out everything about you that you think is repulsive, and you try to give them the best, something that will, a teaser campaign that will make them want more. Guys often talk about being mysterious. This kind of idea that will make them want to pursue more of us rather than just give them what we actually are. Questioning is a big one that people start a conversation with. You go up and particularly asking a question where you don't actually give a fuck about the answer. Oh, so what do you do for work? Like you care. You don't care. Stop pretending you care. You don't. You don't care what they do for work. You don't even care how their day has been. Most of the time. When you're asking these questions, most of the time, you're just trying to keep the conversation going. That's what you care about. You're trying to show them that you're an interested person and that you're deeply empathetic and compassionate and blah, blah, blah. That's what you care about. You don't care about their answers. The only thing you care about with their answers is how you can use their answers to ask your next question or make your next observation, how you can use that answer to your advantage to make them like you more. You're trying to connect with people and this is your strategy. Do you really wonder why it's not working? Do you really wonder why you don't feel connected? You're mining people for information when you ask questions. You're stealing their information. You're breaking into the safe of their information vault and taking their information away from them. With a question, they know nothing about you. You hide behind a wall with your question and reach over the wall to steal their information. And if you're wondering why that doesn't help you connect, think about it deeply. Is that really the way that two people come together? Do you really think you're going to connect with someone when they know nothing about you? It doesn't even make sense. And yet asking questions is our common, not just for starting a conversation, but also for continuing one. When there's a silence and we feel that awkwardness, we often throw a question in there. It's like throwing out bait with a hook attached to it, trying reeling in some information that you can use. So we've talked enough, I think, about what doesn't work. And what I really want to look at now is a completely different way to initiate interactions. We've already sort of planted the seeds around why you should be doing it in order for it to be healthy and helpful. So looking at it as a way to live by your values, honesty, courage, to build your social skills, to practice, to give people the opportunity to connect with you if they need that right now, to invite them to something, to give them abundance socially by being the one who leads, to give them what you want, essentially, to be the giver. Let's have a look at how this is done. Because I know a lot of you would have heard my little rant about compliments before and thought, how's that not giving? If I can't do a compliment, if I can't ask a question, what the hell can I say? And that's what I want to look at. Because it isn't really about compliments and questions. If the genuine thing you want to say is a compliment, then that's fine. If you're genuinely curious and want the answer to a question, that's fine as well. What we're looking for here is this genuine thing. When I start an interaction with somebody, I want to start with the truth. And the reason I want to start with the truth is A, because it will help build a connection. A connection is based on truth, not lies. And B, it means I never have to perform for this person. I never have to try and impress them. If I start truthful, if I start with what I actually am, then I can continue with that. There's no mask I need to wear and then later try and remove. I can start mask-free, performance-free. What you see is what you get. I can start with that, and then I'm never going to be under pressure with this person to impress them. But how? How do we go from looking at a stranger to saying something without trying to think of the right thing to say, without trying to make them like us, and all the while living by our values? This is where we bring in the 3X model yet again. There's a 3X cycle that you can follow to allow yourself to start a conversation genuinely and then continue that conversation genuinely. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the 3X model, it's these 3 stages that you cycle through. Today we're going to be starting with the release stage, because before I look to initiate an interaction with someone, I want to be in this kind of place of silence, this zero, where I can be affected by other people. I want to allow myself to be an open space that reacts to people, because that's where I'm going to figure out what I'm going to say. So if I'm walking around, let's say I'm at a party, rather than going like, okay, who can I talk to? What should I say? I'm just going to sit back and go, okay, I'm going to let all the people at this party affect me now. I'm just going to become this thing that reacts to people. I'm going to see, who do I notice and why do I notice them? What do I notice about them? So this is kind of the starting place. You can actually practice this separately, and I really recommend that you do. And one of the ways to do that is people watching. So sit yourself down at a busy cafe or something like that. Something that you can look out onto the street as people walk by. A place where you get to see a lot of people over a short period of time. And just observe them. Just notice how you're affected by them, what you think of when you see them, how you feel when you see them, what they remind you of, what judgments come into your mind. Just allow that to occur and actually train yourself in allowing it to occur. Sometimes you can use questions to help yourself out, like, I wonder what they do for a job, or try and guess where they're going. You see someone walking, like, I bet they're going to meet their friend because they're busy, and I don't mean guess like randomly make up a fictional story, but like actually try to read the person and come up with a theory as to what they're doing, who they are, etc. This is a great way to train yourself to actually pay attention to people. Because when you're trying to think of the right thing to say, you're not paying attention. You're off in the future predicting the outcomes of what you would say. So one of the key things to being able to initiate genuine connections with people is to first be in a space where you are free from that. Where you just go, okay, what is going on right now? What is real right now? What do I notice? So starting with that, the first part, when we go to the 3X model in this particular situation, starting with that release, like release yourself from trying to do anything. Let's say you wanted to practice this and you're going down to the local busy shopping street to walk around practicing meeting people. Start with just walking around, noticing people, getting a feel for the place, seeing what affects you, noticing what mood you're in, noticing what thoughts occur to you as you see people. This is actually a skill set, because most people are so fucking up in their heads trying to plan everything all the time that they don't notice shit. I've had quite a few Brojo guys like, oh, what if I'm walking around and I just don't notice anything? Nobody stands out to me. I'd say you're not paying attention, because everybody's fucking interesting if you look closely. You look at anyone, you start asking yourself, why did they put their hair like that? Why did they choose those clothes to wear? Why did they walk with those little quick steps and look at the ground? If you start really paying attention to people, they become this mysterious thing that you want to know more about, I mean, one of the things that's really helped me with my social life and my ability to socialize in general has been developing a genuine curiosity for people. I want to know about their psychology. I want to know about how their mind works. I want to know why they do, what they're hoping to achieve, what they're trying to avoid. These things are interesting to me. And there's so many variations that I'll never find a final answer. Everybody's got a different answer. And I want to find out all those different answers and soak up the wisdom of psychology around that. So one of the first things is just observe. When you get to a party or you get to, you're sitting on the bus or whatever, just observe. Who do you notice? Why do you notice them? Just those two questions. Who do you notice? Who stood out to you? And answering the question, why did they stand out to you? Now, your initial answers may be superficial. She's got blonde hair, big boobs, or he's really muscular, or he's got a nice suit. But I want you to look beyond that first answer, and ask yourself, who is this person really? What is it that deeply fascinates me about them? And try to see what you can find. Now, if you can't find anything deeper, so be it. You're just going to have to go with that first answer. But I encourage you, especially practicing the people-pleasing, to start looking beyond someone. Try to see their fucking soul as they walk past. Someone walks past you and you go, okay, she's got lovely, long, beautiful hair. What else do I notice about her, though? What's real about her? Oh, I notice she's kind of nervously looking at people as they go past. Maybe she's worried what they think, Or I notice that her shoulders are really up and back. She's got that kind of posture of a dancer. She holds herself really strongly. It's so confident. You start noticing the real things, what really caught your attention in the first place. Now, once you're ready, you kind of move into this curiosity phase where you're actually, I guess we've already talked about, you're kind of answering those questions. First you observe, then the curiosity phase is answering the question, like what comes up for you? What's the main thing that you notice? If you were to express yourself around what you would notice, what would you say? So when I say, instead of coming up with the right thing to say, we're looking to come up with an accurate thing to say. What is the most accurate thing I could say to that person if I was to initiate? And then we go into the honesty phase. We go up to the person, we actually express that thing. Once we've expressed it, we're back to the release phase. We now wait for them to react, and we're going to observe their reaction. So we've gone from noticing everybody and being affected by it. Once we go to initiate with someone, we wait for their reaction. We're just going to be affected by just their reaction. Right? We zone in our focus. So how this might go. So I might be sitting there in the line at the supermarket, feeling a bit bored. And I notice this. I'm like, okay, let's see what I notice about people. I look down and I see the rest of the queue of people. I notice that the guy behind the girl who's next to me has a big tattoo down his arm. And I like it. That's it. Release to curiosity has been completed now. I've noticed something and I've realized why I've noticed it. I enjoy his tattoo. So I then express myself. Excuse me, mate, do you mind if I just tell you something? And he's like, what? I was like, I just noticed your tattoo, and I was a bit bored standing here. I just noticed your tattoo, and I just think it's absolutely fantastic, man. I really like it. That's it. Job complete. Now, how he reacts doesn't matter. If he wants to continue a conversation, fantastic. Added bonus. All that matters is that today I get to go home, and I say, today I was standing in line, and even though I felt nervous, I told this guy, kind of intimidating guy, that I liked his tattoo, and it was a truthful thing to say, and I was able to do it, and the reward is there. So what we can do is you can just simply go around, observe people, ask yourself why you've noticed them, and then go and tell them what you've noticed. As a kind of template, you can say, look, I've come to say hi because I noticed this thing about you, and it made me feel this way. So I noticed this, and this was my reaction to that. That's your gift. Your gift of noticing someone and letting them know that they affected you, that you had a reaction to them. Now, a lot of you will be already, but what do I say next? Well, that's your strategy coming into mind. You think you need something to say next? That neediness is actually going to block you from coming up with anything to say because you're not going to be listening to them. You're not going to be paying attention. Their reaction will give you something to talk about because it will affect you. So if I'm talking to this guy and he's like, Oh, thanks. If I notice that reaction, I can be like, oh, he's kind of a bit embarrassed by me saying that. What would be an accurate way to express that? Well, I could say, looks like did I embarrass you a bit there? I didn't mean to. I just like your tattoo. And then it's his turn again. We're now having a real conversation. It's a bit awkward and stuttery at first, sure. A lot of real conversations start that way. Well, we're just breaking down the barriers, and every time I speak, I'm showing I'm paying attention to him, and I'm giving him respect. I'm saying, you end this whenever you like, mate. I'm just noticing things and expressing them. There's no questions, really. I kind of did a question before, but essentially he doesn't have to give me any information if he doesn't want to. He can leave at any time. I'm just expressing myself because I'm working on myself here. It's got nothing to do with him. If he wants to connect with me as well, awesome. If not, fine. I'm just working on myself, expressing myself. To kind of sum this all up, the key here is first off, the barriers. You think you can't talk to people, and it's bullshit. You can. You've just been conditioned over your life to believe that some things are appropriate and some things are inappropriate. You've been conditioned to believe that you initiating conversation is somehow an inconvenience to other people. Now, there are times when that is true. There are times you stop someone, they don't want to be stopped. You talk to someone, they don't want to be talked to. That's fine. But isn't it worth the risk for saving the life that needed you to talk to them? Isn't it worth pissing off a couple of people briefly, something they won't even remember a few hours later, in order to allow that person who needed someone to talk to them today to have you come into their life? That person who, even no matter what you think of yourself, they think you're the best thing ever. And giving them the opportunity to meet you. I want you to start thinking about giving that invitation to people. They don't have to like you. But one of the key things you'll only find this with experimentation. I can't convince you of it. You need to go and meet people. Go meet 100 people and you'll see what I'm talking about. So many people are dying for someone to talk to. Anyone, about anything. They're just so lonely. We're living in a world now where everyone just feels alone a lot of the time, which has all to do with their disconnection with themselves. But you can take that away from them, that loneliness. At least give them the invitation. You can say, look, if you don't want to feel lonely for a couple of minutes, here I am. They don't have to say yes to that, but you give them the invitation. One of the things is you might notice that you've got nothing to talk about. You're sort of like, I'm noticing people, nothing comes to mind as to what to say. Well, then you can be honest and go up to them and say, hey, the reason I've come up to you is because I'm trying to work on meeting new people. I noticed you first. I don't really know what to say. I just, I wanted to get over my social anxiety by meeting people. You can say that. I've had plenty of Brojo guys go and test that one, and it goes quite well for them. The thing is, you start with something real, and then you let them have their turn, and you let go of trying to keep the conversation going, trying to win them, trying to make them attracted to you, trying to impress them. Just let go of all that. Be prepared for this to be a hit and run where they just leave straight away. Do it for you rather than them, and just see what happens. Go out there and experiment. Let us know how it goes. And I'll see you guys for the next one. Cheers.